Hey guys, it's vf.miniatures Warhammer Tactics series, and today we have an unusual episode. Today we are going to review all the Space Wolf characters that we have now access to in the current supplement. So we are using all the new Arcs of Omen points updates and all the new rules. We're going to discuss how this stuff changed after we got an extra HQ slot. So without further ado, let's dive right in. And to make sure that this video is not 14 hours long, because Space Wolves do have a lot of characters, we will run quickly through some of the characters that I don't think are too noteworthy to actually spend time on them. But for most of them, those that I really think would add a lot to your lists, we will discuss them in depth. And first on the list of characters of Space Wolves, we have obviously the Chapter Master Logan Grimnar. So we have two versions of him in the Codex, on foot or on the Storm Rider, which is the fancy, whatever this thing is, Santa Claus carriage that he's riding. Some guys I've seen even painted him as Santa Claus, and I think that's the perfect way to play him. But we are here to talk about the rules, not about the model. He's Chapter Master, so obviously he can apply the Chapter Master reroll to whoever he wants to, himself or the core units within 6. Very useful to give rerolls to Thunderwolf Cavalry with hammers, obviously with -1 to hit, hitting on 4s or on 3s if you've charged. You still want to reroll those 1s and 2s, and that's very helpful. He has an almost typical stat line for a Terminator Captain, so 4+ invulnerable save, 2+ save, or overall ones to hit. He has 7 wounds though, so 1 more wound than a typical Terminator Captain, and 1 more attack as well, because Terminator Captains usually start at 4, he starts at 5. Well, he's a Space Wolf Chapter Master, so he should probably start at 6, I think, but we have 5, so 6 in the charge. That's good enough. And his Axe of Mordecai is wonderful, because it is both a damage 3 weapon, which we all love and adore, because that's kind of the sweet spot where damage is not too high so that we don't have a lot of attacks, but damage is high enough that we can actually damage some heavy hitting stuff like knights, vehicles, monsters, and so forth, and it's not as reliant, as vulnerable to the -1 damage. And the axe also has a swipe profile for double the attacks and strength 6, AP 3, and damage 1. Awesome, very good buff. So his Warlord trait, the one that he has access to, is +3 to his reroll ones to hit aura, and +3 inches to his command phase ability, so he can apply the full reroll to hit to someone within 9 instead of within 6. His Saga, though, isn't that great, because you would expect from his Saga to be something very, very good. But that one is actually just auto-pass morale. What's good about him is that he automatically completes his Saga, so he's always giving out that aura. Is it awesome? Well, I don't think so. It'd probably be much cooler if he had an aura that is activated maybe easier or also automatically, but the one that makes your Space Wolves units fight harder or be faster, something of that sort. The Storm Rider version of him is 14 wounds, so we have a problem here already. He's over the 9 wounds cap, so he can be targeted. And he is move 10, he can advance and charge, obviously, for Swift Hunters, and can pile in and consolidate 4 inches. Has 6 extra wolf attacks at strength 5, AP 2, damage 1, obviously because he has 2 wolves on the sleigh. Main issue with that is the lack of lookout sword, because we don't want our main character to be shot off the board, and that's what I would do and what any of you would do. First things first, if you saw that model, you would shoot the living hell out of him and forget about him for all eternity. So yes, if the model looks very cool, no, you would never use it, as the current rules are. You would almost guaranteed to lose it in the first turn if you were to use it in a game. So I cannot recommend that version. However, the foot slugging version isn't bad. It's not that expensive, 140 points, very killy, does quite a lot for synergies for your army, so not a bad model. Maybe not perfect, but not bad by any stretch of imagination. So next is my favorite Njal Stormcaller. He's an auto-take in any Space Wolf list, in my opinion, so obviously he's going to be very good. 120 points, not a lot he costs. He's a Chief Librarian in Terminator armor, so already a good package. You get all the perks of a Chief Librarian, but you're not paying the command points for it, which is good. And you're not paying much in points as well, because I think the Chief Librarian, the regular Space Marine Chief Librarian costs now 105 points, the Primaris version. So pretty much you are almost there, like 15 points off, and you get a Terminator guy, which is obviously more protected. He casts 2, denies 2, knows 3 powers, basic stat line for Chief Librarian. He can cast with +1 because of his ability, which basically is like the Psychic Master that you would have to pay a command point for with the Chief Librarian. And he can reroll his denies for free, which is awesome, a very strong ability, and will save you a bunch of command points. Has a Psychic Hood, obviously, as any Librarian should. Has 6 wounds, 2+ save, and pardon me, the slides for this video were initially prepared before the Armor of Contempt was nullified and eliminated, so no Armor of Contempt for him as for anyone else, so ignore all mentions of Armor of Contempt from here on out. So yeah, 2+ save, pretty good. 5 up invulnerable save, very good. 4 attacks on the charge, kind of meh, but you don't want him to fight anyway. His warlord trait is Resolve of the Bear, which is a very good one, and it makes him very survivable. It's a 6-up shrug, and you cannot reroll any 2 wound or damage rolls against him. Very good. And his Saga is also very good, because it's a 6-up shrug aura within 6 of him, and the only thing you have to do to fulfill your deed is to lose a wound, which is funny because psychic guys, the librarians, are probably one of few models in your Space Marine army that can lose wounds because of themselves, because he can suffer perils. So funnily enough, if he casts poorly, you actually fulfill his deed, as far as I was able to understand the wording of the deed, and I don't see any problem with that interpretation of the rule. So it's just a funny quirk. And if he loses any wounds, your guys within 6 get a buff, which is very important, especially if you are babysitting your dreadnoughts, which is probably where Njal would be anyway. So very good character. Moving on to the next one. And the next one is the almighty Bjorn the Fell-handed. So, sorry for my accent, I had to do it. 155 points, and his war gear is now free, so it doesn't matter what you take for him. Is it the last cannon, multi-melt? Usually I took multi-melt for him because it's 5 points instead of 20, but now you can opt for the last cannon if that's what you prefer. I would probably do that just because it gives you more range and it'll allow you to shoot from turn 1 even if your opponent is far away. He's a character dreadnought, already a very good start because he's below 9 wounds, he's 8 wounds actually, and he can be protected by the Lookout Sir. He has decent shooting, great survivability, good combat, and can stay shielded by your units until you decide to pop him out and use him in the game. I mean openly in melee instead of shooting from your back lines. He hits on 2+ in shooting and melee, because obviously he's a character, so he actually hits on like 1+ in combat, on charge, for the Hunters Unleashed chapter tactic. In melee, he has 6 attacks on the charge at strength 12, AP 4, and damage D6. D6 damage is probably the worst part about it, because you can actually roll a 1, and it's just funny that such a big, huge claw can fail to kill a marine, even if it successfully hits wounds and penetrates his armor. But other than that, it's a very, very good profile, which only lacks, again, a very more consistent damage and a sweep profile, which all the big heavy-hitting units would better have. Because I've seen a lot of cases where Bjorn and models like him get stuck in units like, say, 15-20 Poxwalkers, and they just end up clogged there for the entire game because they don't have the volume of attacks to deal with the horde. Good part about his claw is that it's a claw, so you get full rerolls to wound with it, and that's adding to the reliability with him. His survivability is also better than a typical dreadnought even after you consider the character keyword. He's toughness 8 and has a 5-up shrug. Non-vulnerable save, unfortunately, and he doesn't even have a 2+ armor save, so he will be punished if he gets attacked by something like AP4. And now with the armor of contempt gone, it's just, not good. But other than that, he's pretty tough, and if you stay away from the really high AP damage, high damage weapons, you should be fine. What I love about him the most, probably, is the fact that he's still a captain. So he gives an aura of reroll once to hit. And that's just a perfect match made in heaven with the triple Redemptor blob stumbling across the board. Because you really need those rerolls, but you really don't want to keep anyone like a small character there because you want your, say, Thunderwolf captain to charge forth and not care about that stuff. And Bjorn plus 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts is probably like the first place I would go to if I needed to build a competitive Space Wolf list nowadays. I would just buy Bjorn, buy in Battlescribe, I mean, put the 3 Redemptors in the list and then start building everything else, because that's just the perfect way to start a list and extremely points efficient. And you can also use Wisdom of the Ancients to make him give an aura of real ones to wound as well, so make it extra super duper efficient. So yeah, Bjorn, extremely, I recommend him. Bjorn and Njal are my 2 favorite characters with Space Wolves, and always take them. Next is Arjac Rockfist. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing the names wrong. I have no idea how these Viking guys are supposed to be pronounced. I'm just doing my best here. So he costs 100 points and he's a buffed up lieutenant. His main feature is that he's extremely survivable. So he has a 3+ invulnerable save, he has a 2+ save, again no armor of contempt, ignore that stuff, 5 wounds and resolve of the bear as his warlord trait. So the same warlord trait that gives 6-up shrug and no rerolls to wound and damage against him. So already a pretty substantial package. 3+ invulnerable save is very hard to come by, especially one which is both against shooting and combat. So 2+ save, very good. And warlord trait which gives him a shrug for his 5 wounds, which again makes it even harder to kill him even with 2 successful damage 3 wounds coming through his invulnerable save. Well, not very hard, but harder. That's what I meant. He's also pretty good in the fight phase, obviously. He has 5 attacks in the charge at strength 10, AP 3 and damage 3 with no minus to hit, and with full rerolls to hit against characters and damage 4 against characters and monsters. A very good combo. I do love damage 4 wherever it can be found, and monsters and characters is the perfect place to get that damage 4. Unfortunately, it's not vehicles as well, but that would be probably just a bit too much. So he's a good character and pretty strong. He can also obnoxiously throw his hammer at the enemy with the same profile as his melee, but only 1 attack. Very cool and thematic, and if you kill a character with that, I think that you are automatically winning the game. It's too cool to continue. You have already won. Aura of reroll ones to wound is obviously great, however, Space Wolves still have a problem with HQ slots. Yes, we have 4 now instead of 3 that was before, but I'm not sure there is space there for a dedicated lieutenant. You definitely want to have a chaplain there, you definitely want to have Bjorn, want to have Njal, and you probably want to have like one very good, very buffed up fighty character like a Captain on Thunderwolf. So I'm not sure you'll be able to find place for Arjac, but if you can, he's a very good pick in any case. Next is Ulrik the Slayer. He costs 100 points and he is a named chaplain. His stats are slightly better than a regular chaplain. He's a master of sanctity for just 5 points more than a regular chaplain. A firstborn chaplain with the same upgrade would be. He has 5 attacks on the charge with 1 extra point of AP than the regular Crozius, and has a plasma pistol for some basic shooting. If he destroys a character and monster unit in melee, and all his litanies go off automatically, you don't have to roll for them. His main problem is that you can't buy Wise Orator trait for him, and if you are buying a character, a chaplain, for your list, you want those litanies to go off, and obviously waiting for him to kill a character or monster is not the way to go. So rolling a 3+ for the litany to go off is just not going to cut it. Unfortunately, that's why I don't recommend to have that character in your list. His obviously thematic model is very cool. He doesn't have a great melee profile, to be honest, no great shooting, no extremely important buffs from him, and he's not very mobile. So that's one of the characters that I don't think you would ever use unless you really like his fluff, which I support with all of my 2 hands. Next is Ragnar Blackmane. He costs 110 points and he's a named captain. He's very, very potent in melee. So he has 10 attacks on the charge, strength 6, AP 4, damage 2. And damage 2 is his biggest weakness because obviously if you're going to fight against anything that has -1 damage, his power will be divided in 2. I still like him though because the volume of attacks he provides with that damage is incredible. 10 attacks is very, very substantial. Hitting on 2s, AP 4 is also something I really like about him because you will find a lot of Space Marines on the tabletop, especially now when they are buffed up, and those Space Marines will get no save at all against your AP 4, and Terminators will have to roll their 5-up invulnerable save against your attacks. So, very good profile in melee even with the damage 2. He's also very helpful for your army because he has 3 auras. His first aura is a captain one. There's nothing cool here, just a good thing to have. Aura of reroll charges, for core units, and an aura of plus 3 inches to consolidations for core units. So a lot of stuff going on around him. All these things are very useful. Reroll charges are extremely useful. Extra inches to consolidations are situational, but also can be clutch in some moments in the game. And the only drawback about these auras is that none of them actually affect him, which I don't think is wise on GW's part. His warlord trait is Warrior Born. It's fight first ability, helpful but not impressive because we expect something bigger from a warlord trait than just fight first. It's slightly not that cool, especially when we have something like Imperium Sword, which gives you 3 things like +1 strength, +1 attack, and reroll charges. That's a good fighty warlord trait you would expect on someone like Ragnar. His Saga is the same fight first ability, but being a 6-inch aura for core units, and the Saga, in the Saga option, it's very good because having fight first all around you guys is extremely important for fighty armies, especially when you already have ways to manipulate and make units fight last as Space Wolves, Psychic Power, and Armor of Rust. So, very good, and kind of give or take situation. So, not the greatest warlord trait, but a very good Saga on the other hand. Amazing model, very cool pose, so it depends on whether you want to build your own uber killy character, which is probably in its full configuration is going to be killier than Ragnar, but you will have to spend command points on that, which is a give or take situation again, and you'd also get more mobility, which is probably the biggest weakness about him apart from damage 2. He is a foot slogging character who is not that fast, so you need something like a Thunderwolf character on a bike, or a Jump-Pack character to be able to utilize all that combat potential, usually. Next is Chrome Dragongaze. Unfortunately, he's the one that we were going to run through very quickly because nothing exceptional about him here. He's a named captain. He has 1 more attack than regular non-Primaris captain. His axe is strength 7, AP 2, damage 2. Oh, wow. Nothing to write home about, to be honest. And apart from a captain's aura, he has an aura of -1 to combat attrition. it's even funny to pronounce. Nothing wonderful. In general, no real reason to take him over a generic captain. You can give a captain better weapons and better warlord traits and better relics. So, unfortunately, Chrome Dragongaze is probably only left for like Crusade games where he also will not get any buffs and bonuses. So, I don't know. Next is Harald Deathwolf. He costs 120 points and named captain on the Thunderwolf. Has 1 more attack than regular non-Primaris captain. His axe is strength 6, AP 2, damage 2, and 6 is to wound, do mortal wounds, 1 mortal wound in addition. Apart from a captain's aura, he has an aura that allows cavalry and beast units to use his leadership, which is very good for the Cyber Wolves, which have a problem with leadership, and the Fenrisian Wolves as well. So yeah, in that regard, if you are planning to use any of the small puppies in your army, which is actually a good way to play it because they are very cheap and can help you fulfill secondaries and hold objectives. So yeah, that can be helpful in some situations. What I do like about him is that he's more survivable than a regular Thunder Captain with the Storm Shield because he has -1 damage, and that's very, very substantial. So that's why I don't consider this guy to be obsolete. You can actually find a good spot for him in your list. His problem is that strength 6 AP2 damage 2 is not that impressive in melee. Yes, 6s to wound do help somewhat offset that problem, but not completely. You probably want something more substantial. But the fact that he's survivable is great, and he also has a very good warlord trait, which is Hunter, one of the best, or if not the best one in the book. It's the one that gives him +1 to advances and charges, and gives him an ability to charge after falling back. The deed activates advance and charge for core units within 6, and fallback and charge for units, for Swift Hunter units who already had the advance and charge. So the warlord trait is very good, and the deed is quite easy. He just needs to successfully charge an enemy unit. So for 120 points, I can actually see this guy being used in something that can be considered a competitive Space Wolves list. Maybe not the 100% optimized one, but certainly not a bad one. So if you like the model, feel free to use him. He's not out of the question. Next is Canis Wolfborn. He's a named company champion on a Thunderwolf, and for some reason an HQ choice, even though company champions usually are elite, so that's another problem I have with him. He costs 100 points, as I said, and has damage 2, strength 5 lightning claws with extra attacks baked into his datasheet, which is kind of nice. And the stat line is by itself pretty decent, so a lot of damage 2, strength 5 lightning claw attacks. A very good thing to have. However, his main problem is that he has 6 wounds and no additional defense whatsoever. He doesn't have an invulnerable save. He doesn't have like -1 to hit in combat, anything. Just his t-shirt 3+ save, if you can call it that. Obviously 3+ is not a t-shirt, but it's nothing to really protect you against the stuff that will come after someone like Canis Wolfborn. Has a standard 6-inch heroic intervention and fight first ability of a company champion, nothing unusual here, and has a 6-inch aura of +1 or +2 for small puppies attacks for wolf mounts. Kind of nice, but this guy goes into the list of characters you are probably never going to use. Well, I lost my voice there. So the next one is Murderfang. He is another character Dreadnought, and he's also very good. Maybe not Bjorn level good, but he's decent. 140 points, and he's in the elite slot, which is something I do like about him, because even though elites are contested with Space Wolves, they are not as contested as HQ slot, I think. Has 8 attacks, a strength 12, AP3 damage 3, with full rerolls to wound, hits on 2s, and before counter is unleashed. And he's very strong, but still has a problem with hordes, because he doesn't have the swipe, anything that gives him more attacks, and I've seen again him being stuck in a big squad of infantry for several turns until he actually plows through them, but it's probably too late and he's already lost some of his value by that point. Otherwise, he's a standard Dreadnought datasheet, apart from the 8-inch move which he gets for being Wolfen. Has rerollable charges and gets his 8 attacks from a buffed up Shock Assault, so he doesn't get all those attacks if he gets stuck in combat. Another problem with Horde units. My issue with him is that he has no vulnerable save or feel no pain, so his survivability isn't great. So as soon as he comes out to charge, he has a big red crosshair on his head, and he's probably going down very, very soon, sooner than even Bjorn would in the same situation. So even though having a powerful character Dreadnought in your back pocket sounds kind of nice, I still think that Murderfang is probably not for competitive lists. He can be used reasonably well in something like semi-competitive, but not in a tournament environment, probably. And the last character we're going to talk about is Lukas the Trickster. Again, just a fine character, unless you run a horde of Blood Claws, Swift Claws, and Sky Claws. If you're doing that, first of all, my applause to you, because you are actually trying to do something that almost no one ever tries to do, and that's very cool. That's what Warhammer is all about. But other than that, he's just nothing to write home about. Nice melee, 6 attack and the charge at strength 5 AP2 damage 2 with full reroll to wound. Has own aura of full reroll to hit for all claws and also that works on him, so that's kind of nice. His survivability is very limited. He has 4 wounds and no invulnerable save whatsoever. He has transhuman to hit, which is nice, and can't be hit on better than 4+. If he dies in combat, a unit that killed him suffers these 6 mortal wounds, because he's a trickster, and can't be a warlord and can't have a warlord trait. He has an aura of -1 leadership for Space Wolf units within 3 inches, as if he wasn't bad enough already. So yes, a cool character, very thematic. If you're running a bunch of Blood Claws, he may even be nice to have, because you're getting a Chapter Master level reroll for something that costs much less than that. But other than that particular experimental case, he's nothing to write home about. So that's it, guys. I hope this video was useful for you. Let me know in the comment section below if I've missed something about these characters. I might have, and I'll see you in the next video.